All right, welcome to episode 106 of Random Thoughts. Jake, we were talking during the week about work rate.
Yes. It came... So I watched all the 4 footy finals on the week in the AFL. 3 mediocre games that were sort of very one-sided. And then I'm a bit biased here. I'm a Collingwood supporter. Don't hold against me. But the Collingwood West Coast game on Saturday night was a ripper. Quality footy was okay, but it was just goal for goal. And West Coast looked like they were going to win. And then Collingwood had a big surge in the third quarter. And during the game, the Telstra tracker comes up and they're tracking GPS data and all that sort of stuff. And what was phenomenal that came up to me that I thought was really cool was they looked at the stats of meters run in defense, meters run on offense, total sprints, and then tackles, I think was the other stat. It was like those 4 stats in AFL, it's like all that matters.
They're pretty big stats.
Yeah. And they come back to that idea of work rate and how hard your team is working, either compared to the opposition, we can talk about the pros and cons of that, but also compared to how you're going week to week on an individual or a team basis.
So, and how did Collingwood go? Were you happy with Collingwood's performance?
Well, I don't remember seeing... I saw the stats early in the game. I don't remember... And they're talking about during the season, and we were like 2nd and 3rd on all of them across the AFL. And West Coast was significantly low, like 14th, 16th in the league on those stats. West Coast ended up winning by 10 points, 2 goals. And they did that on the back of playing potentially... Maybe they took more opportunity to their chances or whatever it might be, but they played their way, which is more of a mark and sort of more a stagnant kick and mark type style game, whereas Collingwood was very much run, chaos, get through the middle of the ground and just sort of wreak havoc and tackle and pressure. And so we did a good job of that in parts, but West Coast overall managed to control the game through their method, which was a slower, more strategic method, if you will.
And in terms of winning the work rate, so West Coast won the game.
Collingwood would have won the work rate, I'm guessing, based on watching the game, but they failed to win the game because of strategy stuff.
And I think also it can be a little counterintuitive in that it can go the other way in the sense that you can have to work harder when you suck a bit.
Which is
like you're turning the ball over, you're chasing down your opponent, and they're just like the best example I reckon is tennis. Yeah,
and so points to those teams for stick to itiveness and actually giving it a crack even though you're struggling.
But I think let's dive into the tennis thing. I think it's illustrative. So if it's me versus Roger Federer, my work rate is going to be way higher than his work rate because he's just going to be like, I run one way, I run the other way.
And he's just going to send you on a dog chase. He's like, I'll just keep it in for 6 balls and then I'll crush you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think particularly, there's the saying, you can never run as fast as a ball can be passed or kicked.
Yeah.
And so if you're efficient with your disposals, if you're structured well.
And keeping possession like in soccer and AFL,
Yeah, then I think you're able to work much less hard potentially. But I like the division where it's got the on attack and defence.
Yeah, and so Collingwood was 2nd for both, which I was quite happy to see. So we run it, and so you can look, and I think you could compare teams like side by side, like Collingwood and West Coast, and you can see that Collingwood is better. But I think what's probably a more important and a more valuable metric is week to week. So if you're Collingwood and you're a run and gun, tackle, pressure, get into the corridor, handball at every cost type team, then you can compare. Okay, this week we won by 5 goals. We met all our metrics. We ran just as hard on defense. We laid just as many tackles. And then you can look at the next week. We lost by 5 goals. Well, what went wrong? No one ran on defense. These 3 players were down, blah, blah, blah. And you can look at on an individual or team basis over time. I think that's probably a more valuable way of measuring it.
It's also just occurred to me as you're talking that it's finally a way of high performance managers and strength and conditioning coaches being able to justify themselves when teams... Because, like the thing that is a little bit unfair, and I don't want to whinge, we've got great jobs, but like when you're winning, no one notices the high performance team.
Yeah, and your job is to be invisible.
And when you're losing, it's all your fault. It's always the easiest thing to do is to sack the high performance manager or the strength and conditioning coach.
The performance team,
And then you get around to sacking the head coach and...
The football department,
on it goes. But it is a way of going, no, actually our team's fit enough. We're running while we're doing this. It's not a work rate. It's not an output issue. Yeah. So if you combine that, like if you combine work rate with total games lost to soft tissue injury, to non-collision injuries, That's a pretty good KPI for an S&C coach.
Yeah, and you can compare yourself to the other teams, but as we saw on Saturday night, that doesn't always work because tactics and technical things become factors. But comparing your team over time. So, okay, this year we want to be a run and gun team. That means we want to be running a total of 100 Ks a game or whatever is amongst your team. Whatever your sport is, it'll vary with soccer and gridiron and rugby. But you can then use those numbers, particularly in your open field-based sports, and tennis as well is another endurance-based sport, where you can see, okay, how many meters did I cover in this much time? Is that good? How many? And the other stat they have is total sprints.
Yep.
So a sprint is just defined as above 7 meters per second, I believe, speed in GPS velocity zones. And so you can see how many sprints and how long they go for and how interspersed they are.
Yep.
And that then ties nicely into the next topic we'll talk about, which is how to train for work rate.
Yeah. So I think the great thing about more and more technologies, people can now, even at lower levels in footy, you can use GPS to actually know, you can know how fast your opponents are running, how many meters they're covering, what you're doing. So it's getting a lot more scientific at all levels.
And that can also then determine your acute to chronic workload ratio. So you can track your athletes over time to see whether they're staying in that window. We'll link that video.
Yeah.
That's a separate topic.
What that means, though, I think there's much more burden on athletes to make sure they get this stuff right. Because if you get it wrong and you can no longer, what you used to be able to do was you could probably get by a little more by reading the game really well. And
being smarter. Yep.
Yeah, and just your general ball skills, tactical awareness, all those things. But I think now there's also it's just like the raw data of how fast can you run, how much can you repeat that. And so I like that because that makes our stuff more important because you have to be able to have that repeat effort ability.
Yeah, there aren't many athletes these days in any sports getting drafted who are athletes.
Yeah.
They're all, I can run all day, or he's got a massive vertical, or he's a powerhouse or something like that. There's not many, like back in the 70s, 80s, there's these guys that are short and a little pudgy and having smokes after games and stuff like that, and still playing because they're amazing at winning the ball.
Yeah.
Or they can shoot phenomenally or something like that.
Yeah. So in terms of basic preparation, let's talk footy.
Yeah.
So we've talked at length about all the preparatory stuff of your foam rolling, your tissue quality, your strength. Let's assume you've done all those things well. You've got a body that moves well in terms of the quality of its basic movement.
Yeah, and you've dealt with your strengths. You're doing Nordics for your eccentric hamstring strength, and you're stretching and rolling, all the fundamental stuff.
Yep. Then where do you think is the best point to start? So we're looking, we're talking about off-season.
Yeah, we're coming into that right now for footy and soccer. Yeah, so I think the idea that you have to build an aerobic base is a big myth. And the idea that you have to do that via just clocking up Ks like a marathon runner.
Because you need a base, but you can build it's unlike anything else where you can build your base and your roof at the same time.
Yeah, it's
pretty cool.
More like putting together like a tiny home or like a portable or a flat pack house, as opposed to actually with strength and power. You really have to build a foundation. So you have to be able to move beautifully before you can then load that movement. So if it's a core lift, if it's a squat, you have to be able to squat nicely before you go put weight on that squat, because you can do harm and you can create problems. We talked about that before. But with fitness, you can, because the problem is if you do try and build that base by doing 5, 10K runs and just running around the block and pounding the pavement, you will successfully get fit. You will build that foundation. That is true, at the cost of robbing your body of power, explosiveness, and strength.
And you'll also you'll only get one dimension of fitness. So like at the moment, I am aerobically quite fit.
Could run all day at a moderate pace.
That's lovely. But I've got nothing anaerobic. I got nothing in the tank. Like I have no ability, not no, but I have minimal ability to work anaerobically because it's just not how I've trained. And so those guys, I think they're missing a trick because you can simultaneously develop all those traits across 1 week.
And we made a nice video about this 2 years ago now, I think, where there's a flow down effect. So your strength training will give you what's called a strength reserve, which will make your body more efficient and more effective at all paces and speeds. So that's why strength training and foam rolling and stretching, all that stuff is so important. But not only that, your sprinting and your high-end repeat sprint and anaerobic type training will have a flow down effect of making you more aerobically fit without the cost of reducing your power, your strength, and your explosiveness. So it doesn't rob you of that type 2 explosiveness.
You can have your cake and eat it. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's so awesome.
And the cool thing is it's also more fun, I think. Because I'm older, I don't do it as much because my old Achilles, I don't trust them.
Yeah.
But I think it's actually like running fast is fun, and doing something where you feel that it's specific to your sport, that's more fun as well. So easy things to do using I think our repeat effort 20s.
Yep. So repeat 20s are great for basketball and soccer, but for football and rugby, I'd probably open up to 30s and 40s as well. So repeat sprints on 40 meters efforts with like a walk back recovery. So sprint, walk back.
Would you start with that though, or would you you starting?
Yeah. So if we're talking off season, we're talking right now in the year. You've probably finished finals maybe this week or the last couple of weeks. You take a week or two off to recover and just sort of
take a week off.
Rest.
Everyone always says they'll take a week or two, and it ends up being a week or 3, and then you've dug yourself a hole.
Yeah.
Aim for 7 days. You'll end up with 10 or 14.
And then just keep doing something, but try and keep that something at least high intensity. So in that case, I would start with 20 meters. 20 meters for a few weeks of repeat sprints, and then you'd build your way up to 30s and 40s, and maybe even 50s if you're a more mature athlete. Yeah.
Okay. And simultaneously, you should probably be doing a bit of bike work, doing that high-end 8 and 12 type stuff, and keep that ticking over as well.
Definitely. So 8 and 12s on the bike. 15:45s are good for footy as well, or 15:30. So 15 seconds work with 30 to 45 seconds rest, because that 15 really builds up a bunch of lactic acid. And then you've got plenty of rest. You've got 30 seconds rest. It's a long time to get your heart rate back down before you have to go again, which is quite. Those longer gaps are more similar to a footy work rest ratio.
Scientifically, you are spot on. What do you think about applicability, compliance with the 15:45?
I think you should talk about this because I love lactic acid type work. I love anaerobic training because I'm quite good at it, and we all gravitate to things we're good at.
You're good at it, and you have an uncommon appetite for hard work.
I like the taste, yeah. There's a level of that. So I'm biased in that I'm like, everyone can work out, everyone should give it a crack. I think you should elaborate on what you mean there, because I know exactly what you're referring to.
So I think you've got to take a perspective of looking at the physiology of a situation, but also then it's
the logistics.
Yeah, and a physiology only approach would be great if you could just hypnotize everyone, and you could say you are going to do this to your maximum effort and make them do it.
Or you're in complete control of the program, like at the AFL, where you've got the guys in the club 6 days a week, 8 hours a day,
and you've got, in some situations, you've got their heart rate projected onto a screen or whatever as they're doing.
And you can literally go, "Hey Scott, let's pedal a little faster, mate. Come on, what's going on?" Exactly.
But for self-directed athletes, I think sometimes it's about finding the most pragmatic way. And so for some people, they just will not give max effort.
So I love the quote here. The good program you follow is better than the perfect program you won't follow.
Exactly.
Yeah. If it's good, but you do it every single week, then don't mess with that. Keep going. Yeah.
And so if you're doing the 15:45, I think most people need to do that with a partner.
Yeah, a partner or a coach for sure.
Yeah, I think doing that on your own, most people will actually do 12 seconds of effort.
47 to 48. Yeah, second rest.
What percent?
Yeah, like 80% when it should be 105. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's important to be across as well.
Definitely.
So, and the main thing I think is spacing it out. So you're not doing it all. Sometimes people will ask questions, and it seems like really obvious that you should have this stuff spaced out, but it should be some spacing where you're doing really high intensity work on the Monday, or then your Tuesday is going to be a lower intensity.
That might be it. In this period of season, might be working on some skills that need work. So whether it's your longer kicking, handballing, accuracy on the run, things like that. Yeah. So that might be more of a skill thing. We'll grab a mate, head to a park, and get some kicks in.
And just periodize it that way, like change it up from day to day. The main thing I think is that you're getting a minimum of 3 hard hit outs a week. I think if you're getting less than 3, you're not going to improve. And
that would be 2 sprints, 1 bike, would you think, at this stage of season?
I reckon. Yeah.
And then as you get back into footy training and practice and stuff like that, then you would incorporate training, running, and longer running with that as well.
And eventually you just get rid of the bike.
And the bike would be phased out for match play, practice matches, things like that. Yeah.
And if you do that, your ability to repeat that work, and you can come into if you do that well in your off season, you come into pre-season in really good shape, and then you can really display your skills. You can do justice to your skills.
Yeah, and you can cash in more early in pre-season in that everything. There's that quote that training doesn't get easier; you just go faster.
Yeah.
And so early in preseasons where you can really start getting ahead of other guys on your team, maybe you're competing for spots in the ones, or you're looking to make a TAC Cup squad or whatever it might be. You can use that as a chance to really shine early and get just a little asterisk next to him. And oh, he's done some work. That athlete, he or she has done some work in the off season. They've come back in tip top shape, and you don't have to There's this idea that you have to do hours every day to achieve that.
No,
it's just consistently doing 3, 4, and a couple of strength sessions a week. And you can really
consistently working at the requisite intensity. The intensity deficit is always the problem. It's people that put the work in, but they just shy back that last 5 to 10% of intensity, and that's a 10% intensity deficit where you're training at 10% lower than the intensity of your sport. You don't notice that in training because you're still sweating and it's still hard, but you get back into those first sessions
or you get to the first practice match and it's oh my God, this is what a game's like.
Yeah. So if you can, because if you pursue absolute max intensity with your own training, you're probably actually still going to come in about, somewhere between 2 and 5% under the intensity. Anyway.
Somewhere in the mid to high 90s.
Yeah. But if you can be at that level and everyone else is another 5-10% behind you, then you stand out.
Yeah, for sure.
So train hard, smart, space it well, and the work you're putting in now will make you stand out later.
Yeah, because work rate matters in games and in trainings, and the more I think also there's a psychological side of this to tie it all together. It's the habit of working hard. Athletes will often they'll go into a game and maybe they've come from a domestic background where the games are a little less serious, and if the score's blowing out, they don't run as hard otherwise. If you make that habit of being the guy that always runs hard both ends of the field in football, soccer, rugby, then that habit will stand out and that becomes consistent. You do that more and more often. It becomes easier to do as well because you psychologically and physiologically are more used to the work. And so then you're in the right position more often. You get more kicks, more possessions, harder to stay with you, more goals, all the opportunities come. And it's one of those situations where you create your own luck. You create the environment for better chances on the field.
You reminded me of one of my favorite Seth Godin things. He talks about the idea of that so much of our lives is about the stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I think when you're in those situations where you're feeling fatigued, what matters is the story you tell yourself. And the story is, I push through stuff like this. I enjoy this.
I'm always the guy who covers the most
This
Ks.
is the kind of person I am.
Yeah.
And I think that then fuels in games as well. I think it's really, really important.
Nice.
Cool. All right. So show notes, that sports specific article.
That article is, I think you wrote it. I'm
Yeah.
going to say unbiasedly, it's the best article on our website. I think it's the most important. It's the one that's gotten wrong the most often.
Yeah, I like it.
I think so.
It's for a little while. That article was if you searched, because it was written initially for basketballs, but it's
had a couple of iterations since then.
It's broadly applicable. For a little while, it was the number one search. If you Google basketballs strength and conditioning, it came because I had emails from people from India and all over the place asking me questions about it. Yeah, it was really cool.
It's a really well written article, and so we've iterated, and it's now more broadly applicable to all sports, not just basketball. So there'll be plenty of info in there. Yeah. Our repeat sprints, we've got.
And get our bloody app.
Yeah, download the app.
The amount of athletes who are I haven't got around. We made it for you.
It's free.
It's free, and frankly, it's awesome. Dave, you did a great job. You did a great job. Yep. We all worked really hard to make it the easiest app.
And it takes the barrier out of training hard. It just you hit play, it gives you a countdown, and away you go, and you do your sprints.
And it has built into it the 8 and 12s.
Repeat sprints.
It's great. And you can make the custom stuff where you can just, I use it heaps for my calf raises, and it's just a great, easy little app.
It's also got all the info in there too. So if you download, you hit the little info button, it has a little spiel, and it has all the videos linked explaining how to do each of the workouts. So you can then just download that. All the info's there. We'll link the sports-specific fitness article.
Yep.
I think we should link to strength training for endurance.
Yep.
That I think we did a podcast. Maybe it's a blog article. Okay. I don't remember. I'll find that as well.
Okay, great.
And then that'll have you ready to go for the off-season.
And last thing, we've just talked a whole bunch about how it should be really intense. But if you have let's just say you've come up with a 14-day gap. That first day is not the day to be running really fast. You're just saying hello to running again. what I say to people that come from GAT is decide what you should do, and then halve what you think you should do, and then halve that again. That's your first session. Like your first session is just hello to movement.
Yeah.
Not even necessarily moving at full speed. Like just get back into it, ease into it, allow the body just a bit of time to adjust to that before you start going at it too hard.
And then build up smoothly from there.
Yes. Nice. Smooth increments. Yeah.
Beautiful.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.